There are moments in history when the ocean, so often a source of peace, turns menacing. I think of Anthony White, a marine biology student with a passion for surfing, who encountered just such a moment. Ignoring warning signs near a seal rookery ultimately proved fatal when he was violently attacked by a great white shark. It happened one summer morning in 2014 at Surf Beach, California. The weather that day was perfect, sunshine filtering through the morning mist, painting golden patterns on the glassy ocean surface. Anthony, just 22, was exactly what you'd expect from a California marine biology student, with a deep love for the ocean and surfing. He'd been surfing for 8 years, and his friends knew him as someone who combined fearless adventure with a real respect for ocean life. Anthony had an infectious enthusiasm, and he often sought out remote breaks. But he was also methodical, always researching surf spots and ocean conditions before paddling out. He and his friends had spent weeks planning this solo dawn patrol session. This morning was meant to be the perfect combination of his two passions, surfing and marine biology. The college student arrived at Surf Beach just as the sun was rising. He spent the first hour checking conditions and waxing his board at the remote location. Anthony was restless, though, telling other early morning surfers that the real waves were beyond the crowded spots, despite the area being right next to a massive seal rookery at Point Conception. And so, on that fateful morning, Anthony set out early, carrying his 6'2" shortboard and minimal safety gear. He signed the beach access log, indicating he planned to surf the main break. But somewhere along the way, Anthony spotted what looked like perfect waves breaking further offshore. Despite the prominent warning signs about marine life in the area, Anthony paddled out about 150 yards from shore to position himself in the lineup. The area was beautiful, too beautiful to resist, with seals barking in the distance and crystal clear water revealing the sandy bottom below. While setting up for the perfect wave, Anthony suddenly noticed something that should have alarmed him. The water was unusually quiet. There were no other surfers in sight, and the seals had stopped their constant chatter. But he was so focused on catching the wave of the day that Anthony ignored these warning signs. Finally, Anthony had positioned himself perfectly in the lineup and was sitting on his board, legs dangling in the water. Then, suddenly, a terrifying silence fell over the ocean. Out of nowhere, there it was. A massive great white shark emerging from the depths, just 20 feet below where Anthony was sitting. What Anthony didn't realize was that he had entered the domain of one of nature's most efficient predators. Great whites are living fossils. They've remained virtually unchanged for millions of years, their torpedo-shaped bodies perfectly designed for explosive attacks. These apex predators can detect blood from up to 500 yards away and sense the electrical impulses of a beating heart from several meters distance. When hunting, great whites approach from the depths in explosive bursts of speed, exceeding 35 miles per hour, using the element of surprise to deliver devastating attacks with bite forces reaching up to 4,000 pounds per square inch. Anthony reacted instantly, but there was nowhere to run. The massive predator struck from directly below, covering the distance between them in a split second. Anthony managed to see the shark's massive form just before impact. But the attack came with such explosive force that both he and his surfboard were launched into the air. The sound of Anthony's screams cut through the morning silence as the shark's jaws clamped down on his torso. He fought desperately, punching at the predator's snout as it held him in its powerful grip. The massive head shook violently as razor-sharp teeth sliced through flesh and bone. The great white released Anthony after several seconds, typical behavior for these predators when encountering unfamiliar prey. But the damage was already catastrophic. Blood immediately began clouding the pristine water as Anthony, despite his severe injuries, began paddling frantically toward shore on his damaged board. The shark circled below, following the blood trail but maintaining its distance, waiting to see if this strange prey would weaken enough to approach safely. Anthony managed to cover nearly half the distance to shore, his movements becoming weaker and more erratic as blood loss and shock overwhelmed his system. A jogger on the beach heard Anthony's desperate screams and immediately called for help. But the remote location meant rescue was still minutes away. By the time lifeguards arrived, Anthony had disappeared beneath the surface, the ocean swallowing him whole. 2 hours later, Anthony's mangled surfboard washed ashore, bearing the unmistakable crescent-shaped bite marks of a great white shark. The massive gouges told the story of an encounter with one of nature's most efficient predators. Anthony's body was never recovered, despite extensive search efforts. The university established a memorial scholarship in his name, and Surf Beach was temporarily closed while marine biologists studied great white activity in the area. The attack led to enhanced warning systems and additional safety briefings for surfers. As the sun set over the California coastline, the memory of Anthony White served as a stark reminder. I've spent years studying the ocean's most dangerous predators, but one attack always stays with me. It happened on the morning of September 3rd, 2015. The victim was a young charter captain named David Walter, and it served as a grim reminder of the ocean's unforgiving power. That day dawned with perfect conditions in Galveston Bay, Texas. The sky was a brilliant blue canvas stretching over the famous Gulf Coast, with just enough offshore breeze to create ideal fishing conditions. David Walter, 26, and his charter fishing business couldn't have asked for better weather to take 4 tourists from Dallas on the fishing trip of their dreams. David was exactly the kind of entrepreneur who embodied the American dream. The first-generation immigrant had built his charter business from nothing, and his clients loved his infectious enthusiasm and ability to find fish in any conditions. Friends described him as methodical and safety-conscious, always checking his equipment twice, but also driven by an almost obsessive desire to give his customers the perfect fishing experience. The Dallas tourists were celebrating a bachelor party, and David had promised them action in the productive waters near the Galveston jetties. They had spent their first few hours on the water pulling in red snapper and speckled trout, with David expertly managing the boat while the cooler filled with their catch. David had navigated to his favorite fishing spot just 1 mile offshore, where the depth dropped to 25 feet, and attracted schools of bait fish and the predators that hunted them. The tourists were having the time of their lives, already talking about booking another trip. But as they prepared to move to a new location for the afternoon bite, disaster struck. The boat's engine coughed, sputtered, and died completely, leaving them drifting in the strong Gulf current toward the busy shipping channel. David immediately diagnosed the problem: a clogged fuel filter that should have been a simple fix. But as he worked on the engine, the boat's anchor began dragging in the powerful current. The situation was becoming dangerous, and David knew he had to act fast. Local charter captains had warned about recent unusual activity in the area, but such warnings were common in Texas waters. The water had been murky since recent storms, making it harder to see what might be lurking beneath the surface. David had fished these waters for years without incident, and he reasoned that the popular fishing spot would be safe with other boats nearby. With his clients growing nervous about their drifting boat, David made a fateful decision. He stripped down and dove overboard to manually reset the anchor, hoping to stabilize their position while he fixed the engine. What David didn't know was that he had entered the hunting grounds of one of the Gulf's most dangerous predators, bull sharks. They are among the most adaptable killers in the ocean, equally at home in saltwater and freshwater environments. These stocky, powerful hunters possess specialized kidneys that allow them to regulate salt levels in their blood, enabling them to swim far up rivers and into freshwater lakes where other sharks cannot survive. This unique adaptation means bull sharks can appear virtually anywhere. There's water, from the open ocean to golf course ponds miles inland. Their aggressive temperament and willingness to investigate anything in their territory makes them responsible for more unprovoked attacks on humans than any other species, except great whites. With a bite force of 150 lbs per square inch and electroreceptors that can detect electrical fields from several meters away, bull sharks employ a relentless bite and release pattern, striking multiple times with the tenacity of a pit bull until their prey stops moving. David worked underwater to free the stuck anchor, but the current was stronger than expected, and the anchor had become wedged in debris. The 7-effed bull shark had been patrolling the fishing grounds for hours, drawn by the chum slick created by David's successful charter. The predator's incredibly acute senses detected the electrical fields generated by David's rapidly beating heart, and the scent of blood from hundreds of yards away. What happened next occurred with shocking speed. David never saw the shark coming through the murky water. The bull shark struck from behind, its massive jaws clamping down on his leg with crushing force, before immediately releasing and circling for another attack. The impact was so violent that David's clients heard his muffled scream through the water. David fought desperately to reach the surface, but the bull shark continued its relentless assault. True to their species' aggressive nature, the predator struck again and again, each bite tearing away more flesh. The shark's persistence was terrifying. Once committed to an attack, bull sharks rarely give up, continuing until their prey stops moving. The multiple attacks created a feeding frenzy mentality, and the murky water became a churning mass of blood and violence. David's clients watched in horror as the water around their boat turned red. They screamed for help and radioed the Coast Guard, but David had already disappeared beneath the surface, overwhelmed by the bull shark's relentless assault. The Coast Guard arrived nearly an hour later, finding only David's torn shorts floating in blood-stained water. The bull shark had vanished into the murky depths, leaving behind only traumatic memories for 4 witnesses. There's a story they tell in every boating safety course along the Texas coast. It's about David, whose body was never recovered after he went missing. His charter business vanished with him. It pushed the local authorities to require emergency beacons and backup communication systems for all boats. But while the Gulf's bull sharks hunt in murky shallows, thousands of miles away in Hawaii, another predator was about to show why it's earned the most terrifying nickname in the ocean. This time, the attack would happen under cover of darkness, where even paradise becomes a hunting ground. The evening of April 22nd, 2016, brought perfect conditions to the remote coastline near Hanamaui. A gentle trade wind rustled through the palm trees as the sun painted the sky in brilliant tropical colors. For Christian Smith, 24, it couldn't have been a better night for a solo fishing adventure at one of his secret spots along Maui's untouched coastline. Christian really embodied that laid-back Hawaiian lifestyle that drew so many to the islands. With his easy smile and encyclopedic knowledge of hidden fishing spots, he'd become a local favorite at the surf shop where he worked. Friends described him as fearless and independent, always venturing to remote locations that other anglers avoided, constantly searching for the perfect fishing experience that only the islands could provide. That evening, Christian loaded his truck with heavy tackle designed for the large predatory fish that hunted Hawaiian waters after dark. The location he'd chosen was breathtakingly beautiful, but completely isolated. A secluded beach accessible only by a rough dirt road winding through dense tropical vegetation. Christian arrived just as darkness was settling over the ocean. The spot was perfect. A protected cove with deep water close to shore, and a coral reef that attracted schools of bait fish during night hours. He set up his gear methodically, rigging the heavy equipment he'd need for the monsters that prowled these waters after sunset. As Christian waded into about 6 feet of crystal-clear water to cast beyond the reef break, everything seemed perfect. The water was so clear he could see the white sand bottom, even in starlight. And he'd already landed 2 nice fish when disaster struck. Moving through the water to reposition for a better cast, Christian's foot slipped on wet volcanic rock. He fell hard against sharp coral formations, opening a deep gash on his leg. Blood immediately began streaming into the pristine water around him. Local Hawaiian fishermen had warned about increased predator activity during night hours, but Christian had fished these waters countless times. What he didn't know was that the remote location had become a hunting ground for one of the ocean's most dangerous predators. As Christian tried to assess his injury in the dim light, he realized the cut was deeper than expected. His splashing and the metallic scent of blood created the perfect storm of stimuli that trigger a predator's hunting instincts. Unknown to Christian, he had attracted the attention of Hawaii's apex predator. Tiger sharks are perfectly adapted for nighttime hunting in both shallow and deep waters, earning the nickname wastebasket of the sea because they'll eat virtually anything. Their stomachs have contained license plates, tires, and even other sharks. These massive sharks can grow up to 18 feet long and possess an indiscriminate appetite that makes them particularly deadly during nighttime hours when they move into shallow water to hunt. Tiger sharks can detect blood from several hundred yards away, and their lateral line system senses the slightest vibrations in the water, making escape nearly impossible once they lock onto a target. Christian began wading towards shore, but his movements became increasingly erratic as blood loss affected his coordination. The coral cut was more serious than he'd thought, and the metallic scent drifting through the water was like ringing a dinner bell for every predator in the area. The 10-foot tiger shark had been patrolling the reef edge when Christian's blood trail reached its sensitive nostrils. Unlike more cautious reef sharks, tiger sharks are known for their bold, reckless approach to anything in their territory, especially during nighttime hunting hours when they become most active. Christian never saw death coming through the dark water. The attack was sudden and devastating. The tiger shark struck from the side, its massive jaws clamping down on his injured leg with crushing force. The impact knocked Christian off his feet, sending him tumbling in the deeper water. The predator's attack was relentless and indiscriminate. Tiger sharks are known for their tenacious grip, often holding prey while using their muscular bodies to roll and tear. The shark maintained its grip while striking with its powerful tail, creating a whirlpool of violence. What makes tiger shark attacks particularly horrific is their feeding behavior. Once they taste blood, they enter a feeding frenzy, biting repeatedly until prey stops moving. Christian fought desperately, but the predator's grip was unbreakable, and each movement only intensified the attack. In the darkness, the tiger shark's indiscriminate appetite. It leaves me thinking about the raw power of nature, the food chain in brutal action. Off a remote beach, Christian's screams echoed across the empty coastline, but there was no one to hear them. The tiger shark continued its assault, making escape impossible. When morning came, Christian's truck was found at the end of the dirt road, his fishing gear still on the beach. But Christian had vanished, claimed by the waters that had given him so much joy. A massive search involving helicopters and hundreds of volunteers was launched. His body was found 4 days later on a beach 8 miles away. The Hawaiian community held a traditional blessing ceremony, and his surf shop colleagues created a memorial fund for ocean safety education. But while Hawaii's tiger sharks hunt under darkness with indiscriminate appetite, off the rugged northern California coast, the same species that claimed Anthony White was about to demonstrate that even professional watermen who've spent years in these waters are never truly safe from the ocean's most intelligent and adaptable predator. November 8th, 2017 brought crisp autumn conditions to Fort Ross, Northern California. Morning fog lifted to reveal a dramatic rocky coastline where Pacific swells crashed against ancient sea stacks. Ryan Walsh, 29, couldn't have asked for better diving weather. Calm seas and good visibility promised a profitable day harvesting the prized mollusks that commanded premium prices in the finest restaurants. Ryan embodied the dangerous profession of commercial abalone diving. His weathered hands and sun-damaged face told the story of 6 years spent in frigid Pacific waters, free diving to depths that would terrify recreational divers. Friends described him as methodical and safety-conscious, but also driven by an obsessive pursuit of the perfect abalone beds hidden in rocky depths. That morning, Ryan launched his small boat with dive partner Marcus, a younger diver who looked up to Ryan as a mentor. The two had worked together for 3 seasons, developing wordless communication that comes from shared danger in one of California's most hazardous occupations. Ryan chose a productive rocky reef in 25 feet of water. The location was challenging. Strong currents, kelp forests, and the ever-present danger of entanglement in abandoned fishing nets littering the bottom. As Ryan suited up in his thick wetsuit, he felt the familiar mixture of excitement and apprehension. The water temperature was a bone-chilling 55 degrees, but Ryan had built tolerance over years of expo. His dive bag contained an abalone iron, measuring gauge, and collection bag, the tools of his dangerous trade. The first few dives went perfectly. Ryan descended through the kelp canopy to the rocky bottom, where clusters of red abalone clung like living jewels. His experienced eye identified legal specimens, and practiced hands pried them loose with surgical precision. But on his 7th dive, disaster struck. Working to free a particularly large abalone, Ryan's fin became entangled in abandoned fishing nets. The nearly invisible monofilament wrapped around his leg like a spider's web, holding him against the rocky bottom as his air supply ran dangerously low. After a desperate struggle, Ryan managed to cut through enough netting to break free. He made an emergency ascent, lungs burning as he fought through the kelp toward sunlight. When he finally surfaced, he was exhausted, disoriented, and dangerously far from his boat. What Ryan didn't realize was that his distressed movements had attracted the attention of California's apex predator. Great whites are living fossils that have patrolled these waters for millions of years. Perfectly adapted to hunt in the kelp forests where seals and sea lions congregate, these massive sharks typically reach 12 to 16 feet and can weigh over 3,000 pounds. Their torpedo-shaped bodies are capable of explosive bursts exceeding 35 miles per hour, bursts that can launch them completely from the water. Their incredible sensory system allows them to detect electrical fields from several meters away and track blood trails from a 500-yard distance. During autumn, mature great whites patrol northern California in greater numbers, following the migration patterns of their preferred prey. These sharks are incredibly intelligent, capable of learning and adapting hunting strategies, making them unpredictable and extremely dangerous to humans who venture into their territory. Marcus, watching from 300 yards away, immediately recognized something was wrong. Ryan floated motionless at the surface, clearly in distress. Marcus started the engine and raced toward his partner, but the distance seemed impossibly far. The 13-foot great white had been patrolling the kelp beds when it detected Ryan's emergency ascent. The shark's acute senses picked up electrical impulses from his rapidly beating heart, the scent of abalone in his collection bag, and the erratic movements of a creature in distress. All triggers activating predatory instincts. Ryan never saw the attack coming. The great white struck from below with devastating force, massive jaws clamping down on his torso with a bite force reaching 4,000 pounds per square inch, slicing through his wetsuit and into vital organs. The shark's initial bite was exploratory, typical great white behavior with unfamiliar prey. But the damage was already catastrophic. The predator released Ryan and circled back, following the blood. I can only imagine the screams echoing across the water as Ryan fought to reach his partner. The strength rapidly fading as blood loss took hold. He died from massive blood loss just 20 minutes after the attack. Ryan's death sent shockwaves through California's small abalone diving community, and I remember reading about the new safety regulations that were implemented after that. Marcus, his partner, became a dive safety instructor. But while those great whites patrol the kelp forests of Northern California with ancient precision, hundreds of miles south in Florida's warm waters, the same aggressive species that claimed David Walter was about to turn a spearfishing competition into a feeding frenzy. This time, the attack would unfold in crystal clear water, where every horrific detail would be visible. August 14th, 2013, brought perfect conditions to Jupiter Inlet, Florida. The morning sun sparkled on the emerald Atlantic waters, creating ideal visibility for the annual South Florida Spear Fishing Tournament. Alex Paul, 33, couldn't have asked for better conditions for one of the region's most prestigious underwater hunting competitions. Alex embodied the passionate dedication of Florida's spearfishing community. He was a construction foreman from Miami who spent his weekends free diving in those crystal clear waters, honing his breath-holding abilities and perfecting his aim with spear guns. Though not a professional, his natural athleticism and years of experience earned him respect among the tight-knit fraternity. That morning, Alex joined 40 competitors at the tournament briefing. Target species included cobia, kingfish, and grouper, prized game fish commanding high point values. Alex had scouted extensively and identified promising spots where large fish were likely found. Competition began at sunrise, with boats spreading across the designated area. Alex and his dive buddy Carlos headed to a productive reef in 30 feet of water, where bait fish schools attracted larger predatory species. The water was exceptionally clear, with 80-foot visibility, perfect for spotting and stalking quarries. For 2 hours, Alex had moderate success with smaller fish, contributing to his score. But as the morning progressed, he became focused on finding a trophy fish for the top prizes. When he spotted a massive cobia cruising the reef edge, Alex knew he'd found his target. The cobia was magnificent, easily 50 pounds, and worth maximum tournament points. Alex hyperventilated to extend his bottom time, then dove to intercept the fish's path. His shot was perfect, striking just behind the gills. But the wounded fish immediately took off for deeper water. In the excitement over such a prize specimen, Alex became separated from Carlos and the other divers, finding himself alone in an isolated reef section. The wounded cobia's struggle created a significant blood trail as Alex fought to control the powerful fish. When Alex finally surfaced with his prize, he was bleeding from cuts caused by the sharp fins and exhausted from the underwater battle. The combination of fish blood and human blood, along with the continued struggles of the dying cobia, created the perfect stimuli, triggering the predatory instincts of every shark in the vicinity. What Alex didn't realize was that he had attracted one of Florida's most dangerous predators, the bull shark. Bull sharks are perfectly adapted to the state's warm coastal waters, possessing a remarkable adaptation that allows them to survive in both saltwater and freshwater. These powerful hunters typically reach 6 to 8 feet and have specialized kidneys that regulate the salt content in their blood, enabling them to appear anywhere from the open ocean to golf course ponds miles inland. Their incredible sensory system allows them to detect vibrations from struggling fish hundreds of yards away and sense electrical fields from several meters distance. Unlike other shark species that may be more cautious around humans, bull sharks are known for their bold, direct approach to potential food sources, often competing directly with spear fishermen for their catch. Their aggressive nature and opportunistic feeding behavior, combined with their ability to strike repeatedly rather than bite once and retreat, makes them one of the most feared predators in American waters. This particular 7-foot bull shark had been patrolling the reef when the scent of blood reached its nostrils from hundreds of yards away. The predator's acute senses detected the electrical fields generated by both the struggling fish and Alex's rapidly beating heart. Alex saw the shark approaching and tried releasing his catch, hoping to distract the predator with the wounded cobia. But bull sharks are opportunistic feeders with insatiable appetites, and the multiple potential prey items only intensified its aggressive behavior. Instead of taking the offered cobia, the water turned crimson in an instant. It's a sight I've only ever read about, thankfully, but the Dions always stay with me. In this case, it was the result of a bull shark attack during a spearfishing tournament. The bull shark struck Alex directly, its massive jaws clamping down on his leg with crushing force. The attack, by all accounts, was swift and brutal. Major blood vessels were severed by the bite. And the predator, true to its nature, inflicted multiple strikes, causing massive tissue damage. Alex fought back desperately, punching at the shark's snout, trying to reach his dive knife. But the bull shark's aggressive nature meant a continued assault, relentless determination, striking again and again until, as I said, the water turned crimson. Other tournament divers, alerted by the commotion and the spreading blood slick, raced toward Alex's location. They found him floating unconscious, his spear gun and wounded cobia drifting nearby. The bull shark had vanished, leaving only devastating evidence of its attack. Despite immediate first aid and a Coast Guard helicopter evacuation, Alex died from massive blood loss during the 40-minute flight to a trauma center. The tournament was cancelled, and the spearfishing community mourned one of their most respected members. Alex's death, as these tragedies often do, led to enhanced safety protocols in tournaments. New requirements mandated closer proximity to dive buddies, and organisers began providing emergency response training. The association established a memorial fund promoting safer diving practices.